Right now, you are probably stressing about a light winter frost outside your window. You wake up, shiver for a brief second, and immediately walk over to a digital thermostat on your wall. You press a button, and hot air instantly floods into your sealed, climate-controlled home. Your modern obsession with synthetic insulation, heated car seats, and absolute thermal comfort is a disease of the cage. Your ancestors survived the most brutal climatic disaster in human history, not by hiding in a heated bunker, but by facing the freezing tundra head-on. For tens of thousands of years, during the brutal peak of the Pleistocene epoch, there were no radiators, no heavy wool coats, and no emergency shelters. There was only the open, freezing, wind-blasted steppe, and yet our ancient ancestors did not just survive the Ice Age. They thrived in it. They built, they hunted, and they pushed the limits of human biological endurance. How did they achieve this absolute mastery over a frozen world? To solve this incredible mystery, we must dismantle the biggest environmental myth in human history: the helpless, freezing caveman. Welcome to Ancient Huddle. Today, we deconstruct how ancient humans actually survived the brutal Ice Age. We will look at massive, mind-blowing architectural discoveries from the frozen plains of Ukraine. We will explore the tiny, revolutionary invention of the bone needle, and stay until the very end, because we will reveal an emotional realization about prehistoric winter survival, a tribal huddle that completely reframes our modern, isolated relationship with the cold. For decades, popular culture has painted a very specific picture of Ice Age humans. We are told that early humans simply huddled in deep, dark caves, shivering helplessly while waiting for the glaciers to recede. This image portrays our ancestors as victims of their environment. The premise is simple. Since humans evolved in the warm, tropical heat of Africa, our hairless bodies were completely unprepared for the freezing north. We are told they survived purely by lucky geography, hiding in a few scattered warm valleys. But archaeological science has recently dealt a massive blow to this theory. The helpless, shivering cave dweller is a complete myth. And this brings us to our second nested loop, the Mammoth bone houses of Eastern Europe. To understand how prehistoric humans actually survived the freezing tundra, we cannot just look at natural caves. Natural caves are incredibly rare on the vast, flat plains of Europe and Russia. If humans were going to hunt the massive herds of the open steppe, they could not rely on finding a convenient hole in a mountain. To find the real truth, we had to look at what they actively built with their own hands on the frozen dirt. Archaeologists excavating a site near the village of Mezhyrek in modern-day Ukraine discovered something completely breathtaking. Trapped beneath layers of frozen ancient soil were the remains of massive, incredibly complex, prehistoric structures. Our ancestors did not just wait to find a cave. When they walked out onto the treeless, freezing tundra, they built their own massive artificial caves. And because there was no wood available, they used the only abundant material on the vast steppe, the bones of woolly mammoths. When researchers carefully reconstructed these ancient ruins, they found something that shocked the scientific community. These were not simple, flimsy windbreaks. They were massive, highly engineered circular fortresses. 15,000 years ago, ancient humans were actively gathering hundreds of massive mammoth skulls, heavy jawbones, and long, curved tusks. They interlocked the heavy skulls to form a solid, windproof foundation. They used the massive curved tusks to create towering, arched roofs. They covered the entire structure in thick, heavy animal hides to trap the heat inside. This means ancient humans were deeply sophisticated architects. They understood load-bearing structures. They understood thermal mass. The insulated house is not a modern invention of civilization. It is an ancient Paleolithic survival technology. This leads us to our third nested loop, the biological threat of freezing to death. Why did our ancestors go to such extreme lengths to build these massive, complex bone houses? Gathering hundreds of heavy mammoth bones from the freezing landscape requires immense time, energy, and intense physical labor. If they could just wrap a loose fur around their shoulders, why build such heavy, permanent structures? The answer lies in the terrifying reality of the Ice Age wind chill. When the winter storms hit the open steppe, the temperatures plummeted to deadly, unimaginable lows. The wind howled without any trees to stop it. If human skin was exposed to this freezing air for even a few minutes, frostbite would instantly set in. A loose animal hide draped over the shoulders would simply blow open, letting the deadly cold reach the heart. Evolutionary anthropologists studying the history of human clothing discovered something absolutely fascinating about human survival. To survive the deep freeze, humans could not just wear loose, draped furs. They had to invent perfectly fitted, highly tailored, airtight clothing. Archaeologists digging deep in the Denisova Cave in Siberia discovered the ultimate weapon against the Ice Age. It was not a massive spear or a heavy stone axe. It was a tiny, delicate needle carved from the bone of a large bird. This tiny bone needle, complete with a perfectly drilled microscopic eye for threading, is over 50,000 years old. It is one of the most important technological breakthroughs in human history. With the invention of the bone needle, ancient humans were no longer victims of the cold. They could actively cut, piece together, and tightly sew heavy animal hides. They created airtight, tailored parkas, thick, heavy trousers, and perfectly fitted waterproof boots. They used animal sinew to stitch the seams so tightly that not a single blast of freezing wind could penetrate the clothing. Over tens of thousands of years, this tiny technological invention allowed humans to conquer the most brutal environments on the planet. We did not survive the Ice Age because we had thick fur. We survived because we possessed the brilliant, creative intelligence to borrow the fur of the mammoth and the wolf. But our adaptation to the cold goes even deeper, down to the very social fabric of the tribe. Humans are not solitary predators like the polar bear or the snow leopard. We are deeply fragile, highly social primates. While modern society teaches us to survive by buying our own individual heated coats and paying for our own private heating bills, ancient tribes desperately relied on communal warmth. By working together to drag massive mammoth bones across the tundra, the tribe ensured that everyone had a heavily insulated fortress to hide in when the blizzard struck. Our survival is literally built on sharing the heavy burden of the winter. We are cooperative survivors, built to protect a diverse, deeply connected family. Now, let us bring these three loops together. Let us look at the grand realization of what this means for us. When you look back at the freezing Pleistocene world, you do not see a brutal, terrifying landscape of solitary misery. You see a highly cooperative, incredibly warm tribal huddle. The act of staying warm was not a private, isolated economic transaction. It was the absolute anchor of prehistoric trust. While the freezing tundra was a high-risk, deadly environment, the gathering of bodies inside a massive, shared mammoth bone house provided a steady, deeply reliable safety net that kept the entire family alive. And this brings us to the ultimate, humbling contrast of the ancient huddle. In the modern world, we sit alone in our heated rooms, isolating ourselves from the natural world outside. Warmth has become a solitary biological luxury and a purchased commodity. But 15,000 years ago, inside the roaring hearth of a mammoth bone house, warmth was the ultimate expression of communal love. Because surviving the blizzard required deep mutual reliance, the members of the tribe, the hunters, the gatherers, the elders, and the children huddled tightly together around the central fire. They shared their vital, radiant body heat to survive the freezing dark. When a mother felt the bitter cold creeping in, she did not panic about freezing alone. She simply looked around the roaring fire. She saw the heavy, tailored coats made by the elders and the massive protective tusks gathered by the hunters. Warmth was not a solitary metric of individual wealth. It was a shared biological anchor of absolute trust. We believe that our modern winter anxiety can be cured by buying a thicker synthetic jacket or turning up the thermostat. We try to force our bodies to avoid the cold entirely, but we are missing the entire point of prehistoric resilience. Our ancestors survived, not because they hid from the cold, but because they possessed an incredibly fluid, adaptive intelligence that embraced the harsh reality of the earth. And more importantly, they stayed warm because they stayed together. Your body does not just crave a hotter radiator or a thicker blanket. It craves the huddle. It craves the shared warmth of the pack, the slow crackle of the winter fire, and the deep, relaxing knowledge that you do not have to face the freezing wind alone. So the next time you walk out into a cold winter morning, do not complain. Feel a deep, quiet respect for the millions of years of cooperative survival that built your very blood. Adapt together. Survive communally. And remember that the ultimate survival secret of our ancestors wasn't just how they hunted the mammoth, but how they cared for each other inside its bones. If this video has changed how you understand the deep time history of our ancestors, please subscribe to Ancient Huddle. We are dedicated to sharing highly researched, deeply informative stories about ancient human life, survival, and the evolutionary secrets trapped in our bones. Thank you for watching, and remember to cherish the huddle.